Hello, it's Mrs. Owens. Today we're going to be talking about parts of the cell, which we call organelles. So this is page 7 of your note packet, and you can go ahead and fill this out as I'm going through the different definitions. So first of all, let's talk about what an organelle is. So organelle is really similar to the word organ, and you probably are familiar with some organs that we have in our bodies. So for example, we've got our heart, we've got our brain, we've got our eyes, our intestines, our kidney, right? We've got all these different parts of our body that have different jobs. So the word organelle is related to the word organ, and it's just talking about the different parts of the cell. So organelle means tiny organ. Tiny organ. So I'll put that in. And it is a part of the cell that has a specific job. So just like your heart has the job to pump blood throughout your body, the nucleus of your cell has the job of holding your DNA, or the mitochondria is responsible for producing energy, right? It's the powerhouse of the cell. So let's go ahead and talk about these different organelles down here below. I put a picture or drawing of what the organelle looks like because I want you to know what it looks like. That means I want you to know how to draw it. And also identify it, right? If you're looking at a cell, what are we even looking at? I want you to know the different parts of the cell. So first of all, this first picture here is a cell, and the arrow is pointing to the blue stuff in the cell, and we call that the cytoplasm. Cyto with a C, cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a thick solution that fills the cell similar to jelly. So when you think cytoplasm, I want you to think, oh, that's the jelly goop inside the cell. It's mostly going to be composed of water. There's a lot of water inside the cell, but there's also salt and sugar and ions and other things that are dissolved in there as well that kind of make up the cytoplasm. And it's really important that we have a certain concentration of these molecules in there because that can influence different things that are happening in the cell if we've got too much sugar or too much salt or too much water, stuff like that. So that is the cytoplasm. Next, we're going to talk about this pink structure that kind of looks like a bean. We call that the mitochondria. And you probably memorized the definition that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You probably learned that in middle school. And that is true. It is the powerhouse of the cell, but I don't think a lot of people understand what that really means. So let's give it this definition here. The mitochondria is the site of ATP production. Remember, ATP is that molecule that our body uses for energy. And we get this by the breakdown of sugar. So our body takes sugar that we eat, it sends it to the mitochondria breaks it down, uses that energy to make ATP, and then our body can use ATP to do all of the reactions that happen in our cells and all over our body. So that is the mitochondria, the powerhouse, right? It's where we get our energy. Okay, next we've got the nucleus. And the nucleus is usually really large in the cell. Like you can actually see it. So for example, if you go to page 6, the previous page, we had these images of cells here. And the cells are these big blocks, right? These big rectangles. And then inside the cells, you usually have these little blue dots. And the little blue dot inside of the cell is generally going to be the nucleus. It's fairly large and usually easy to see under a microscope. And the nucleus is an enclosed area that stores the cell's DNA. So DNA is our genetic information, and it's really important that you don't lose your DNA, right? You want to keep that information as well preserved as you can. So your body keeps it in this little safe, this little enclosed area where your DNA is going to be protected and enclosed. And I really love the movie Nacho Libre, and there's a really famous line in Nacho Libre where he talks about the nucleus. And it's super funny. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that little clip from Nacho Libre here.
Where's your robe, Ignacio?
It was stinky, but these are my recreation clothes.
They look expensive.
Thank you. I mean, yes, they may have the appearance of riches, but beneath the clothes, we find a man. And beneath the man, we find his nucleus.
Nucleus?
Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that. So beneath the man, we find his nucleus. I love that. Okay. Let's go on to our next image here, which is our yellow guy. We'll just call him that. This is our ribosome. And the ribosome is the machinery that makes proteins. Proteins are so important, right? Proteins are like the building blocks of our body. They do so much in our body, and so ribosomes are really important because those are the guys that make proteins. If you're ever looking at an image of a cell, they are very small, the ribosomes, and they look like little dots. So actually, let me pull up an image here for you, ribosome and cell. Usually ribosomes are going to hang out just outside the nucleus. But for example, let's look at this image here. You can see the ribosomes are going to be those blue dots. So usually they're just represented as tiny little dots. Or like this image right here, you can see they kind of hang out next to the nucleus. And they're just represented as tiny dots. But the actual structure of it kind of looks like what is on this yellow picture. So we've got this machinery that's just pumping out proteins, the ribosome. Okay, next, this is a section of the membrane, the cell membrane. And the cell membrane is the outer surface of the cell. It regulates what enters and what leaves the cell. So the membrane could be compared to like a bouncer at a party, right? So the bouncer is regulating who comes into the party, who leaves the party, stuff like that. So the membrane is really important because it keeps the cell contained for one, and then it's just regulating what's coming in and what's coming out. On page 12 and 13 of your notes, we're going to talk about the actual structure of the cell membrane, and it forms this bilayer or this double layer of lipids or fats. So this is kind of just a snapshot of what the cell membrane looks like. Okay, finally, we get to this next image here. On our next image, you can see we have a cell membrane again with the lipid bilayer. And above it, we have an arrow pointing to what says peptidoglycan. And this is what we call the cell wall. And the cell wall is just a rigid structure, and specifically a rigid sugar structure. So peptidoglycan is a type of sugar, specifically that bacteria have on the outside of their cell membranes, but there can be other different types of sugar as well, like cellulose and fiber and stuff like that. So besides that, it's a rigid sugar structure outside the membrane. So it's outside of the cell, and it provides support and structure to the cell. So one example of a cell that has a cell wall is a plant cell. And so let me show you a picture here of a plant cell. Plant cell wall. Yeah, let's look at this picture here. I like this. So you can see there is a membrane, right? A membrane regulates what enters and what leaves the cell, and it keeps all the contents inside the cell. And then outside the membrane, you also have a cell wall. So there's two layers. Or if you look at this image here, you can see there's an inner ring with a light green, and then an outer ring that has a darker green substance. So it just makes the cell a little more rigid, a little more structure, and it can support the cell as well. So that is the cell wall. And then finally, we've got our green guy here. This should look familiar. This is the chloroplast. And the chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. It is able to absorb light with the pigment chlorophyll. And make sugar, right? That's the whole goal of photosynthesis, is to make sugar. So plants can absorb sunlight, and that energy is used to make sugar molecules from the carbon dioxide that they take from the air. So this is our chloroplast. Okay. Once you are done with page 7, you do have an assignment to do where you draw a cell with the different organelles. Make sure when you do your drawing that you label all the different organelles. You're welcome to use Google to help you do this. Let me know if you have any questions about this assignment. And it shouldn't be too bad. It should only take you like 10 or 15 minutes to do that. So again, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.